hosted by Soteria International. We are a quite new human rights organization, and we focus on discrimination and human rights abuses when they afflict people because of their spiritual practice or religious affiliation. My name is Konrad Svenninger. I'm Swedish. The organization has its base in Copenhagen and also in Brussels. I will moderate this together with Joachim Porslund, who is a journalist from the Truth Seminar. And let me start with a little short story. A friend of mine, she's half African, half Swedish. When she was a little girl living in Malmö in Sweden, she asked her mother to walk 3 meters behind her when they were walking the streets, because it would make her look less black. The mother agreed to this. To that degree, the racism and the discrimination was internalized into people. Last week, I was in a meeting with Danish Interfaith Forum, where a similar story was told about a professor at the university who belonged to the Unification Church. He had students who had left his lectures about mathematics, saying that someone from the Unification Church had nothing to teach them. He advised his children never to mention in school that they were from the Unification Church, to save them from the pain. There are groups that become stigmatized in a society, and to our experience, a new, very important group to look at are these religious minorities and those who adhere to a spiritual practice that is not a norm in the society. And today we'll focus on the fact that this social stigmatization becomes to such a degree that this is institutionalized. This happens through the role of the media and also through the active help of some anti-sect organizations and private interests. And in some countries this has even developed some anti-sect squads within the police or initiatives within the government of a country targeting this, from the beginning, very vulnerable groups. We'll focus on Italy and Romania today, and we're very happy to have a representative from Italy here. The Romanian delegation were also invited. We hope that they will come. We will start in Italy. This question about the institutionalized problems with this group is not new. It has been raised as a parliamentary question regarding the anti-sect squad. And we will start with Senator Perduca, who is not with us today, but he gave a video interview on this issue. It's 7 minutes long, explaining his view on why he put the question regarding the anti-sect squad. So, Senator Perduca on the anti-sect squad sites.
In a moment in which the government is cutting funding to a variety of governmental agencies, we were deciding to invest some money in looking after these people that are called sect. So we wanted to know how much money was being spent for these anti-sect squads. We also wanted to know in the way in which these squads work, because if you look over the internet, you realize that there are some groups that have been used as consultants. And these groups that have been used as consultants are divided into 2 categories. The first one, the more structured, if you want, group that is also has also been working with the government for many years, since the beginning of these anti-sect squads, is a community that takes the name of a pope. So you already have a religious organization. This is the community of John 23. That has been working with the police to try and investigate, quote unquote, because the methods of investigation is also something that we question, to try and find out if there's a cult or a sect that's doing things, without necessarily saying what kind of things should be considered to go against the law, because in Italy we have no crimes that could in fact be used to pursue these people. The second group is a group of association of anti-sect associations. So there's a bias to start with, people that already have an agenda that are trying to pursue this agenda through a governmental entity. And so we wanted to understand how much money was being spent and the way in which these groups were operating. Because sometimes, and that has been demonstrated after those quote-unquote investigations had been carried out, the methods used highlighted the problems of work of these groups. So it's up to a government after a period of year, and this squads have been established 7 years ago, to evaluate what you're doing, how you're doing, and what are the results. From what we could gather through public sources, there were no results. And on top of this, there were also some misbehavior on the part of the consultants on the one hand, and sometimes also on the part of the police. So we wanted to know what was going on. It was introduced at the end of 2012, when we were at the end of the 16th term of our parliament, after months and months of hearings held by the Committee on Justice to try and reintroduce a crime that was deleted in 1981 by the Constitutional Court, which is mental manipulation or coercion of people by someone, also known as plagiarism. I know that in English means something else, but this is the way in which we call it in Italian, that it was a heritage from the fascist penal code. A process that also heard from both these groups of people that are consulting with the Anti-Sect squad, but not with hearings that concerned the Anti-Sect squads. That decided, the chairman of the committee decided not to convene them and listen directly from these people in the field, quote unquote, what they were doing and how they were doing it. This parliamentary question was also modeled on another parliamentary question that had been introduced sometime before my document by someone who eventually withdrew the question. And I was also asked to withdraw it. It is not the way in which a member of parliament should be working. If there's something to hide, first of all, I think you have to insist on having this secret unveiled. I don't really know if there was a secret. Perhaps there was some money involved or some additional psychological problems on the part of the representatives of those organizations that I eventually met. But it's not up to a member of government to persuade another member of parliament to persuade another member of parliament to withdraw a formal text. That's not the way in which things should be doing, especially if you're talking about someone that's fighting against dangerous sects. You're behaving in a very secretive way, which is not necessarily what you should be doing. I believe that in a democracy, if you take a very important decision to establish yet another group of investigators or police with a specific target, you should have had a debate in Parliament, which is the place where we make laws. I wanted to understand what was the rationale behind the setting up of this squad. And the other problem that there is, every time you devolve to the police this big power of investigating, is that knowing also the way in which the Italian police work, you are running the risk of infringing human rights if you do not monitor the way in which the police works. And then I think if we were to go to the root of the problem, I would like to know why we need in Italy such a group of people pursuing this kind of behavior, because there's no crime. We have articles in our constitution, Article 8, that enshrines the right to freedom of religion and belief. There's the European Convention on Human Rights, also at Article 10, that says the same thing. We wanted to understand if there was a specific motive to start from the bottom, that is, set up this Anti-Sect squad, and then going up to Parliament to re-establish an article of the fascist penal code. I think every time you target something that has to do with a choice, you are always running the risk of going against the general principles of our constitution. So on top of violating a general principle, you also, in a way, create the perception of the fact that there could be some norms that are being violated if you decide to join one of these sects or cults, which is completely not true, because there's nothing in our criminal code that says anything like that. And in a way, you add some problems to your freedom of choice, creating this atmosphere of intimidation, in a way. So watch out, because if you're going to do that, there may be the police. I can unleash the police against you, and this can be said by relatives, parents or friends or enemies or people that have a problem with you, regardless of your choice, with you. And then because they can activate the police against you on virtually no legal grounds, but on some type of mechanism that has been established in an administrative way, not in a legal and political way. So that is a big problem. And if you cannot even, as a member of parliament, double check on how these groups work, then you close the circle and you have a huge problem.
So, if we have lights, this is the senator who put the question to the parliament, as he said, regarding the existence of this anti-sect squad. And as you see, we cut the things very straight. We show where we cut the people, not to make it be as honest as possible to you. And it's quite synthetic, this. He goes into many aspects of it, and we will go further with this with the panelists here that can answer your questions also. Perduca cannot answer your questions. So we go further to Camillo Maffia, who is a journalist and activist for human rights, and who has researched and written about this issue extensively the last years. And it will be about 10 minutes talk and then short questions to each of the panelists.
Thank you. Good afternoon. In Italy, equal opportunities are not always guaranteed by media, and several forms of media stigmatization occur in the ethnic and religious field. For instance, we often assist to offensive and discriminating representations of the Roma minority, depicted as a sort of security trouble, and in the same way, Jehovah's Witnesses are often depicted as a dangerous, destructive cult in TV specials, without giving their representatives any chance to defend themselves or to tell the painful story of their religious movement. Even the deportation by the Nazis of both minorities is not acknowledged. Worldwide experts talk about moral panic, especially about new religious movements. Media social alarm about thousands of dangerous cults is mainly unreal in a country where only 2.5% of the population belongs to religious minorities, according to Chesnul. This moral panic is mainly spread by the media, like the moral panic about Islam spread after the 9/11 tragedy, which luckily faded due to the absence of new terroristic attacks that the Western world feared in those years, although forms of media stigmatization still interest the Islam minority in our country. This kind of disparity of treatment is harmful for religious human rights and for the cohabitation and inclusion of religious minorities, as well as for freedom of conscience. The MISA yoga case is a good instance of misrepresentation and disparity of treatment in Italian media. What Italian public opinion knows about this incident is that a religious movement, MISA yoga, broke into the news after the intervention of the Florence substitute prosecutor Angela Pietroiusti, who started a penal proceeding and initiated a broad police action against MISA. At the dawn of 6th of December 2012, the operating team, in collaboration with Florence Anti-Cult Police Department, broke into the private houses of 25 Italian citizens and foreign residents in Italy, connected in various fashions to the school of yoga affiliated to MISA from Romania, and even in the private houses of family members and friends. Of those, 18 are still investigated, while the others were considered people informed of the facts. Charges against them are criminal conspiracy, prostitution, pornography, enslavement, and sexual violence. Press omitted the following facts about the controversial side of these investigations. In 2005, MISA's founder, Gregorian Bivolaru, asked for and obtained political asylum at Sweden. Stockholm Court rejected the query of extradition by Romania government since he would not have received an equal process in Romania. In 2010, he was acquitted in Romania from all the accusations, the same that Pietroiusti is now supposing, in first grade and even in appeal. In 2011, he won a dispute where it has been acknowledged that he has been a political persecutor in the years of communist regime of Ceausescu. And in 2012, various Europarlament members asked for clarifications at Romanian Justice Minister, and the Europarlament Italian member Rita Borsellino presented an interrogation at European Parliament on question regarding the ongoing process in front of Romanian cassation. And even if organizations like OSCE, Soteria, and Human Rights Without Frontiers reported several violations of human rights in the MISA's case, and there are 5 open dossiers on their persecution at the European Court of Human Rights at Strasbourg, the Italian press never mentioned this side of the matter. After many unfounded investigations brought on by the Anti-Cult Police Department, members of parliament and experts began to pose several questions about the work and the existence of this special team and the choice of its referents, who are mainly Fekris anti-cult associations and even Catholic religious groups. Necessity, costs, operations and even constitutionality of this department, as well as its compatibility with European recommendations and standards, have been the subject of political and academic debates. 3 parliament interpellations have been presented to former governments who never answered. But the high-pitched debate about the Anti-Cult Police Department, as well as the parliament interpellations about it, has never been reported by media. Facts show a scenery that doesn't match the picturesque representation of cult panorama in our country. Nowadays, not a single dangerous cult in the history of Italian trials has ever been discovered, nor a case in the religious field where the behavior of a member could have been extended to the entire religious group, nor even a case where the religious group ordered or covered crimes committed by some of their members, with the only exception of the covering of sex abuses on children in the Catholic Church, which has never been described as an abusive cult by the media, however. Italian Anti-Sect Police Department closely cooperates with Fekris associations who have a radical point of view in the matter of cults and have raised several trial cases who turned out to be unfounded. Furthermore, the decree itself that constitutes the department provides for the cooperation of the police department with the anti-cult service of a Catholic group, the Papa Giovanni XXIII community, which is known for their extremist positions on themes concerning laity. Italian police cooperation with Catholic organizations in the religious field came on the media in 2002 when a Catholic priest, Donaldo Buonaiuto, was summoned as a cult expert in a presumed case of ritual crimes that again turned out to be completely unfounded, and the media representation of this case at that time ignored the risk this cooperation represented for laity and religious equal opportunity, describing instead the priest's role in the investigations as a sort of struggle between good and evil. The same happened with other cases of presumed crimes connected with alternative spirituality, religious minorities or Satanism, when even exorcist priests were interviewed to explain the danger of disciplines like yoga and to warn the public opinion against the danger of Satan who comes when you abandon the Catholic faith and turn to different religions or beliefs. Some experts and commenters have speculated on the existence of a scientific creation of moral panic, and this theory finds support in Italian media's history and evolution in this field, as we think of 1998's ministerial report on dangerous cults and new religious movements. This internal report, that showed an unreal, scary scenery of mysterious and dangerous cults all over the country, ended by mistake in the hands of the press, who published immediately, generating panic in the public opinion. Instead, the wide and transversal criticism that followed didn't find any room inside the press, even if it came from the most important experts and scholars of religion and cults. The struggle against cults begins in the 80s, right when Catholicism ceased to be state religion, and after the abolition of the crime of mental manipulation. Opposition to minority cults comes out all of a sudden at that time from 2 main organizations, a Catholic anti-cult movement, Greece, which may have had founded worries about the loss of prestige that the abolition of Catholicism as state religion could have meant for the Church and for the competition of other religious movements in the attempt of gaining new followers, which in Italy focuses mainly on Jehovah's Witnesses, and a lay anti-cult movement, Aris, supported by communist members of parliament and politicians, which had the political objective of reintroducing the crime of mental manipulation and of interfering with the rise of Scientology, seen by some exponents of the Communist Party as an American interference on Italian territory in the last years of the Cold War. Anti-cult campaign continued on the media, always keeping lead on the political aspects of this matter, in the 90s, when Greece focused especially on Satanism, raising one of the biggest unfounded cases of satanic cults with Marco Dimitri's Children of Satan, and Aris tried deprogramming techniques on a Scientologist, Alessandra Pesce, who was kidnapped and suffered fracture on her feet after the deprogrammer's abusive action, while media spread an unjustified Satanism alarm in the public opinion. and described the Church of Scientology as a destructive cult, as it still is seen by many people in our country. The birth of more lay anti-cult organizations, which joined the CRIS, and the involvement of Papa Giovanni XXIII community raised other cult cases on television and newspapers, along with comments of experts talking of thousands of dangerous religious movements in the Italian territory, warning institutions against any agreement with or tolerance of minorities like Jehovah's Witnesses or Soka Gakkai, and in generating in the Italian citizens an increasing diffidence and a lack of tolerance towards freedom of religion and belief. Political exponents, members of parliament, religion experts, jurists and constitutionalists repeatedly launched alarms against this situation, especially after the Archeon case and the involvement of the famous scholar Raffaella di Marzio, charged to be a guru who wanted to reconstruct a dangerous cult only because of an article where she analyzed the Archeon movement under investigation at that time, and she came to the conclusion, which turned out to be right after the end of the trial, that it was not a dangerous cult, but an open and free religious community. And because of the opening of a web forum on her website where former and actual members could freely talk and compare their different points of view, as she believed in a dialogical scientific approach. The involvement of Dr. Di Marzio in police investigations revealed the danger for democracy and religious freedom that anti-cult campaigns represent. And after her final discharge, important commenters started to publicly worry about the constitutionality of the anti-cult department and its cooperation with Catholic priests and FECRIS organizations. Important jurists like Mauro Mellini fought hard in the 60s and in the 70s, along with famous Italian intellectuals like Pierpaolo Pasolini, Umberto Eco, Elsa Morante and Marco Pannella, for the abolition of the crime of mental manipulation because of the dramatic case of Aldo Brabanti, an Italian intellectual who was convicted for mental manipulation before the abolition of the crime by the Constitutional Court because of his socially unaccepted homosexual relationship with a younger man. And now the same jurists, along with academic and political exponents, warn against the danger of the attempt to restore the crime of mental manipulation in the wake of the anti-cult campaigns. The crime of mental manipulation, abolished in 1981, was included in the Italian code by the fascist regime. And it is worth to remember that, even if the Italian constitution decrees freedom of religion as an inviolable human right, some fascist laws has never been abolished, including the ones about tolerated religions. Nowadays in Italy, political exponents and religious experts still ask for the reintroduction of the penalty, invocating the dangers of some religious minorities. It is interesting to notice that the main conferences about cults in Italy, where the police, many experts and political exponents learn about the menace of abusive cults, take place in the Ateneo Regina Apostolorum, an institute which is owned by the Legionaries of Christ, maybe one of the most controversial religious movements in the world after Father Maciel's scandal. But media have always kept a lid on such contradictions.
Thank you very much, Camillo. And do we have any questions regarding this very broad and still with many details about? Please.
Thank you. I'm Eric Roux from the Church of Scientology Office of Human Rights. It's more a remark, but which goes into what you say. You said that, for example, the Anti-Sect people were thinking that in the 80s that Scientology was like the US going into Italy, but it's strange to see that they did not see that FECRIS is France going to Italy, because FECRIS is funded by the French government. So maybe that would be good to tell them that they have like a Trojan horse in Italy coming from France, you know. And the other thing would be to say that you are talking about the Piaggio law, which is a law under Mussolini, and at this time France is the only country who has done a law called Abu Bakr, which is the same than the Piaggio law of Mussolini, and it went from France to Belgium. And maybe we should see that it does not go to other countries now, you know.
Thank you very much. I agree. It's interesting with the many cultural connotations. Like, for example, it's a danger with an American Scientology, but not a danger with the French FECRIS having great influence. Another thing striking with Italian is this recurrent term Satanism. Everything that is evil in Italy is Satanism, and it's for sure not a judicial term. and still something that works very well in media and is repeated time and time again. Any other questions regarding the Italian situation?
Thanks for a very interesting presentation. My name is Simon Paposhvili. I'm from International Partnership for Human Rights, Brussels-based NGO. I wonder if you could elaborate a bit more, because you hinted in your presentation that there are some links between what Vatican does and the anti-sect movements. I would be interested to hear more if there is any evidence of in what way they're engaged, and is it funding, or is it, what is it, how do they support the Vatican, the anti-sect movement?
Yes, thank you, because it is important to precise that the policy of the Vatican and the Catholic Church is of tolerance and religious dialogue. I only had to mention some Catholic groups which do not represent, in my opinion, the policy of the Catholic Church. And these groups, like this Papa Giovanni XXIII community, they are the main reference of the anti-cult department in Italy. But I can't say that they represent in any way the policy of the Vatican.
I mentioned that there will be time in the end for further questions.
Thank you. My name is Peter Zöhr. I'm the Secretary General of the Forum for Religious Freedom Europe, based in Vienna. Last year, in Italy, a observatory on religious freedom was established, right? Massimo Introvini was he is the head of that, as I understand, and we were quite impressed. Italy going a good course, but how is this happening now? Is there some contradiction? I would like you to elaborate on this.
Well, I can't see any contradictions in my opinion, because I know well the policy of Massimo Introvini. It depends by which point of view you're looking at the subject, because when he talks about the worldwide situation, Italy is in a very good situation. For instance, the crime of mental manipulation does not exist anymore in our country. In France it does exist. So what happens in our country, luckily, is very far from what happens in Nigeria when we talk about religious freedom. And he needs to be very objective about that. But when we talk about the specific problem of the anti-cult department of police, I believe Introvini says the same things that he has the same concerns.
Thank you for this. We will move further with the Italian. You mentioned also the Archeon case, which is tightly connected to the decree starting the SAS, the Anti-Sect squad in Italy, and you mentioned also the famous scholar Marzio, who is with us and who will be the next speaker. In between, we will have a short testimony on video from one of the Archeon practitioners who hesitated to give this. He fears for some of the consequences. In the same way we edit it quite rough, direct. You will see only what he wants to say, and again, he cannot answer the questions, so it's 5 minutes of this, and then we go further.
My name is Cosimo Campidoglio. I've been one of the members of Archeon for several years. Archeon was more or less a path for personal growth. It was organized with seminars during a weekend, or in some cases 4 or 5 days, and people went there to share their personal experiences and to search for a better understanding of their own life and needs. That's very simple was the content. It was not a community. The seminars were for payment, so you were completely free to come and not to come back anymore, to attend very often or once in your life. There were all the cases possible. The association and all the seminars has been closed back since 2008. after the explosion of the Archeon case, which was born in 2006 after some TV interview by some former members who told stories of crimes committed during the seminars. And then after 2008, when the first notification of inquiry arrived to some teachers, everything has been closed. Since then, there's no more Archeon in any form. What happened at the time, it was a complete madness. That's the only word I can find. After the first TV interview, many other TV interviews followed, articles on the newspapers and many forums on the internet, all repeating some mantra words. Destructive psycho-cult. The word cult was the first and most damaging word. We were a cult. Who committed crimes, frauds, violences, sexual violence, violence against minors, professional abuse, because we pretended to be psychologists, to cure people, to cure cancer, and so on. We divided families. We brainwashed people. There's been often talk about brainwashing. And people couldn't understand what was happening. Things went even worse after the first notification of inquiry, because many of the people who couldn't believe the newspapers, seeing that the police was taking a stake in the story, start fearing, well, probably there is something true behind, probably we are really a cult and we don't know it. In a certain moment, I believed that I could have been a cult member due to all of this. Then I awake and I said, okay, we are going mad. Because the pressure is so high that you try a way out. And the way out is to see, well, probably they're right, because otherwise it's crazy. The hotels which hosted from time to time our seminars start receiving letter of threat with scars, bones, disease, dangerous psycho-cult, you are helping the devil, you are part of the story. People, some person had the wheels cut in front of the house, and then the problems began in the local communities. One priest asked the family not to attend anymore the church because he created embarrassment to the community. One school asked the family to send their sons in another school because families was frightened. Someone has been called by their boss to refer about their activities because they had the public face and they put in embarrassment at the company, and so on. Families, relatives, parents start fearing that their sons or relatives were involved in something strange and dangerous. So many persons were really frightened and with no clue to come out of this. Finally, all of this started in 2006. I think in 2011 the trial started, and the trial was against the founder and other 5 teachers, and it lasted 2 years, and it came out with nothing. I've been one of the lucky. I've not been directly involved in the trial, and so not been destroyed economically, physically or personally. But I clearly remember those days in which each day when I left home to go to work, I had to say to my wife, if police arrives, be calm and call me as first thing. The fear to be called by my boss at work to explain who I was and why I committed some strange crimes who could create embarrassment to the company. After the first TV transmission by a scandal transmission in Italy, I had the fear to find the camera coming out from my office there to take the monster on the TV. So I had fear, and we were in that condition for nearly 1 year, not knowing why. Kafka's trial is a good representation of what you can feel in that moment. I don't know why, but I fear. I don't know for what, but I have to fear, because I see people around me having done nothing who are seeing the life destroyed.
And we go straight to Raffaella de Marzio.
Okay. Let's begin with the situation in Italy now. This is the Cesno Encyclopedia, and I am a contributor of this encyclopedia. The percentage of Italian citizens who join religious and spiritual minorities is 2.5%. In the first edition of the Cesno Encyclopedia, published in 2001, we had counted 658 groups. In the 2013 Encyclopedia, we counted 836 religious and spiritual minorities overall, which operate in Italy in an organized fashion. So there was an increase of about 200 groups in 12 years. In this slide, you can see the main groups, the typical group present in Italy, and you see that in this place there is no mention about Archeon group. Archeon was an organization in which there were about 10,000 people, but it is not here because I was forced to stop my research about Archeon on March 2008, because the prosecutor of Bari, the place in which the trial, the prosecutor closed my website, and I received a notice of investigation which listed science fiction accusations. I was the new guru of this organization. I was guilty of crimes, and I was studying a religious group. I would like to study, and I am a contributor of an encyclopedia of Cesno, and I do this kind of things since 2001, and never happened something like this. I was forced to stop my research. I was investigated. I was the new guru. So I abused children. Yes, because this was one of the accusations. And I brainwashed people, and so on. Next, please. Oh, no, prima. Okay. My experience, now I would like something about my experience. I started to work as a volunteer in this field with a Catholic association in 1993. At first I used to receive requests for information and help only from families, members going through a crisis, or former members of religious groups, journalists, and law enforcement authorities. Over the years, I also began to receive contact and requests for information and help from people affiliated to religious and spiritual movements. Such help usually being asked for when these people became the target of attacks in the media, on the internet, in books written by former members, on radio, television, and so on. And my problem is that I don't know why new religious movements members asked me for help, because really I was in the opposite field. But their request made me conscious that abuses against religious groups exist. And they can be perpetrated in many different ways. Such cases afforded me the opportunity to compare the recollections and experience of people who are still affiliated with those of hostile former members concerning the same religious group. I found this opportunity, which I chanced upon, to be very stimulating, since it opened up new horizons of awareness and made me research richer. In order to collect data for my doctorate, I am interviewing some new religious members and ex-members of different groups. One of the most interesting phenomena I am studying is the way of satisfied members live the persecution and discrimination in everyday life. Cosimo spoke about this very well. How they describe their feelings towards hostile ex-members who very often had been their best friends. I am seeing a lot of suffering as much as I see in cults victims. I could describe the suffering I have witnessed in current as well as former members, in worried parents, as well as in their exasperated adult children whose choice to join a religious group is not accepted by their parents. Each person I listened to was worth of being listened, understood, and helped with empathy. It is clear that when I speak about person, I speak about people, human beings, no matter if they are affiliated or not to a religious group, if they are parents of children. Why I will do it so? Because in my experience, over the last 20 years, I realized that many kinds of discrimination and violation of human rights depend on the fact that we judge people by the group they joined. This prejudice causes a lot of suffering. People are shunned or ostracized in different ways. Next, please. Next. When people are treated as group stereotypes rather than individuals, many problems can arise. For example, difficulty in finding or keeping a job, unnecessary strains in family or romantic relationships, is isolation of children at school, antagonism by neighbors. In general, I would like to stress a very important and negative effect of this labeling process. People who join an alleged cult or psycho cult lose their human dignity, because they are considered as brainwashed people. If they try to defend themselves and their association, saying that they are free and happy, no one believes them, because they are considered reliable people. The stereotype is that these people can be satisfied only because the leader brainwashed them. When this idea is accepted also by the police during the investigations, their situation became worse, because satisfied members are considered as mad people. As a result, they could not be believed. I've spoken with dozens of satisfied members who, at a certain point of the persecution, began to feel themselves really guilty, but they didn't know why. It was only a negative and painful emotion, but it was very hard to face. Children. Children try to be safe, to go to school and to be protected from any kind of harm, and parents' right to educate and take care of their children are endangered when the religious and spiritual communities are under attack from media, anti-cult groups, and when Pacific communities are scared by raid with dozens of policemen. The consequences of this hate campaign are very negative, especially for children. I know many cases of children who are still suffering, and I will explain this pain using the words of a child. You can read this sentence. This is one of the sons of Vito Carlo Moccia, the leader of Guru. His son said to his father this sentence one day, and I think this is very dangerous for children to to think about this matter. He's 9 years old, and to realize that his life is different from the other children. This family, the family of Vito Carlo Moccia, is a victim. And from 2008 and 2010, this family was forced to move their children from a school to another every year. In 2010, to save his children from such heavy situation, the father decided to move to another city. And in this situation, the eldest son, became very insecure and has developed a strong aggression. One day, in a bitter weeping, he let out this sentence you can read. Rather than be born from a sect leader, I would rather have never been born. Next, please. And the next. Okay. The repressive law in Italy. On the basis of the exaggerated statistics and the alleged cult alarm, some members of parliament have been proposing from 2000 to 2013 3 different bills against mental manipulation. This is the last bill proposed in 2013. During my hearing at the Second Senate Commission on Justice on September 2011, where it was discussed the proposal to introduce this law, strongly supported by the Forum of Italian Anti-Cult Association members of FECRIS, I tried to explain that this is a very dangerous law. Some days after this hearing, the FECRIS Italian Association reported me to the anti-cult police team, to 3 senators of the Commission, and in copy to the Ministry of Internal Affairs for my presumed activities in defense of the cult, asking to investigate on me. This law is dangerous because no one knows for certain how much a person is free when he or she makes a choice. And for many other reasons, I can say everything. Please, next. This is Marco Dimitri. This is one case mentioned by Camillo Maffia. He was a very dangerous Satanist, but really he was innocent. This is the day of this, the first day of jail. Next. These are some cases from 1980 and 2013. You can see, yes, it's okay, but the Romania and the MISA are still under investigation in Italy. The other group, you can see that they did almost nothing, but they were persecuted and discriminated for years.
Very much. So if we have any questions regarding this before we move further. We will now, for the moment, leave the Italian situation and move to Romania, where we see a similar institutionalization of the stigmatization, the same way that a group has been stigmatized during years. He was persecuted during the Ceausescu times and ever since. We will start again with a few minutes of video. This is not done by us, but let's see a few minutes of this presentation.
Joi, 18 martie, 300 de procurori și jandarmi mascați cu arme de foc au pătruns în 16 proprietăți particulare din capitală. Teroare, violență, abuzuri, încălcarea flagrantă a legilor țării și a drepturilor omului.
M-a luat, m-a trântit, a dat cu țeava puștii în mine, în zona aceasta a ochiului, la tâmplă. I-a spus, cine scoate o vorbă, cine mișcă, are un glonț în cap.
Prima dată m-au luat la zoo și a zis, vă rog foarte mult, nu mă luați pentru că sunt bolnavă de inimă.
Tăbărât cu arma îndreptat spre mine, m-a lovit cu arma, m-a trântit prima oară, m-am ieșit de perete, apoi m-a imobilizat la sol, amenințându-mă să nu mișc, că voi fi împușcat.
Police have broken into our house like terrorists wearing machine guns.
I think it's terrorists, it's guerrilla, it's people breaking into the house, going to kill us all.
Où ils ont pris effectivement tout ce qui m'appartenait, tout ce qui est mes archives de travail, puisque j'avais ça temporairement avec moi, l'ordinateur, les diapositives du Tibet, les négatifs, les tirages d'exposition.
I couldn't believe that it's police the way they were treating us, because police for me is something that will protect people, that will work for them and not against them.
Percheziția a durat la noi de dimineață până seara, de la 9 dimineața la 9 seara, timp în care au ridicat 2 camioane de bunuri, de la cărți, casete video cu cursuri până la televizoare, obiecte personale, lenjerie intimă. Au umplut 116 cutii mari de carton cu toate acele lucruri.
Am văzut cu toții cum au intrat trupele de mascați, au imobilizat niște oameni care n-aveau niciun fel de armă în mână sau nimic cu care să-i atace.
Mădălina și Mirona dormeau. Au fost puse la podea cu pistolul la ceafă, așa cum erau în pat, aproape dezbrăcate.
A fost cumplit. Jandarmi mascați m-au smuls din pat cu forța, m-au trântit la pământ, m-au lovit în sân cu bocancii, urlând că dacă fac și o singură mișcare, mă împușcă în cap.
Cu toate că legea interzice în aceste cazuri filmarea și difuzarea minorilor, imagini cu Mădălina sumar îmbrăcată apar pe toate posturile naționale de televiziune.
Timp de 12 ore am fost amenințată cu arma de foc la tâmplă.
După aceste ore de teroare cumplită, Mădălina este dusă la parchetul de pe lângă Curtea de Apel București. A fost apoi obligată de anchetatori să scrie și să semneze o declarație falsă.
Procurorii m-au amenințat că dacă nu scriu ce mi se dictează, voi fi închisă într-o celulă și nu se știe când îmi vor mai da drumul. Mă trăgeau de păr, mă amenințau că îmi vor teroriza familia și prietenii. Mă dădeau cu capul de birou în timp ce mă forțau să scriu ceea ce îmi dictau.
După ce a fost ținută ore în șir la parchet, minora a fost dusă cu forța la Institutul de Medicină Legală pentru expertiză medicală abuzivă. Despărțită de logodnicul ei, este apoi sechestrată la Constanța. La Constanța, Mădălina va rămâne în casa surorii ei mai multe săptămâni. Este traumatizată, amenințată și terorizată de propriile ei rude. Și abuzurile continuă. Peste 300 de yoghini veniți să protesteze pașnic în fața IML-ului sunt terorizați, bătuți și maltratați de mascați și de jandarmi. În urma altercațiilor, 10 de persoane au fost rănite. Unele dintre ele au ajuns la spital în stare foarte gravă.
Erau niște mascați și îl târau și unii îl loveau. Am văzut că trăgea 2 jandarmi de el. Trăgea de el și a fugit după el să-l omoare.
Stăteam cu mâinile deasupra capului și chiar cu mâinile ridicate și în continuare loveau. Am primit un pumn în plină față, fără nici măcar să ripostez. Am căzut jos, mai mulți bocanci. Am primit în coaste pe unde s-a nimerit.
În opinia președintelui Apador CH, autorul acestor abuzuri este Serviciul Român de Informații. Prin acțiunile întreprinse împotriva mișcării de integrare spirituală în absolut, SRI a încălcat regulile elementare privind drepturile omului. A urmărit MISA fără să explice de ce este pusă în pericol securitatea statului. A manipulat presa și a făcut declarații care au indus în eroare opinia publică.
Asta trebuie să ne pună pe gânduri pe toți.
Haideți să vedem cine cum a greșit. Au trecut 9 ani.
This case, the MISA case, it's one of the big cases that has been documented by several human rights organizations. The founder of Helsinki Committee in Romania, the famous dissident Gabriel Andreescu, has recently written 2 books about this case, and it's ongoing in Romania. What we focus on now is the connections to the state, the institutionalization of this. And unfortunately, the delegation is not here, but we're very happy to have Willy Fautré of Human Rights Without Frontiers, who made a report regarding the case recently this spring.
Thank you.
take some time.
Yeah, it's working. Okay. So the previous speakers, this side event, have focused a lot on harassment, demonization of religious minorities by non-state actors, also social panic created and amplified by the media, as well as social hostility and intolerance against whole groups. All this leading to various forms of discrimination towards individuals belonging to these groups. It is in this perspective that I will share with you my experience and my report about the MISA school in Romania. A very complex issue because there are three main components. First, you have a network of yoga schools named MISA. Then you have the spiritual leader, Gregorian Bivolaru, and afterwards you have the normal, ordinary yoga practitioners that were influenced by the media coverage of this issue that you already partly saw now on the screen. First, what is MISA? MISA, first, is the acronym of Movement for Spiritual Integration in the Absolute. It's a non-profit organization that was registered in 1990. It is a loose network of training centers, yoga schools, ashrams. There have been some sociological surveys about this group, just a very small number of statistics. The average age of the members in 2005, when that survey was made, was between 30 and 40 years old. 64% of the members had a university degree, and more than 80% of the people had a job, either in the private sector or in the public sector. So while quite well integrated into a society, I would say. Now, Gregorian Bivolaru, started teaching yoga in the 1970s already, so at the time of communism in Romania. And of course, he started getting into trouble with the regime, and especially under Ceausescu. He was arrested several times, jailed, sentenced to prison terms, sometimes amnestied, and also sent to a psychiatric hospital at some time where Ceausescu was putting the dissidents. But some time after that, Ceausescu was overthrown, and so the country got rid of the communist regime. Unfortunately, the campaigns against the yoga centers was not finishing with the end of communism in Romania, because the people in the police were the same, the people in the judiciary had not changed, and they still had that culture that yoga was, a suspicious movement from outside, and that it should be repressed. So for about 10 years, from the mid-90s until 2004, there were regular campaigns against yoga in general and MISA schools in particular. In the meantime, there was also a revision of the trials that had taken place against Gregorian Bivolaru, and in 2011, a court ruled that all the charges should be dropped because those trials had been politically motivated. Then in 2004 happened what you saw now on the screen. So massive police intervention, 300 masked policemen from the anti-terrorist forces crashed into 16 private houses and also ashrams, the library of MISA in Bucharest as well. You saw that the pictures were taken, that the whole operation was filmed, and what is bizarre is that those films were already on the Romanian television on the same evening, and you saw the humiliating positions or situations in which some of the girls were at the time of the shooting. Just a small detail, that operation had been called Christ. So I think that it was one way of showing that Christianity, and in particular the Orthodox religion, was the main religion and the only one that could be accepted, and that any competing, I would say, belief system was not welcome in Romania. So the campaign culminated with the events that you have just seen. One of the charges that were brought against Gregorian Bivolaru was sexual relations with a minor. Another one was trafficking in human beings, and another one sexual perversion. That was, of course, mentioned in all the media at the time and during the proceedings in the next 10 years. One of the minors was interrogated by the police on the day of the intervention from morning until evening without a lawyer, outside the presence of her parents. She was 17 and a half at that time. She was living with her fiancé in Bucharest. When she went back home in the evening, she told her boyfriend, let's say, and he immediately reacted and said, okay, we will go and see your lawyer, and tomorrow you will say that it was under constraint, that you made that statement, that you agreed that on paper that Gregorian Bivolaru had had sexual relations with you. So on the next morning she went to court, to the police station with a lawyer, and she withdrew her statement that had been obtained under constraint and in unusual and illegal circumstances the day before. But the police and the judiciary afterwards didn't take that retraction into consideration, and the case went on. And the case went on for years, as I said, covered by the media. And that poor girl that you saw, Madalina, was called in the media the prostitute of the yoga school. She was called the private whore of the guru, and so on and so on. So you imagine the psychological damage that caused in her life and in the life of her family. So when I was in Bucharest in May of this year, the situation of Gregorian Bivolaru was as follows. He had been cleared in 2010 and 2011 from any charge by the courts, first the court in Sibiu, and the second one on appeal in Alba Iulia. But the prosecutor's office had lodged a complaint and got on cassation. And so I was present at that session, the Court of Cassation. It was about half an hour, not more than that. And 1 month after I left Bucharest came the final decision that Bivolaru was sentenced to 6 years in prison and 5 years of deprivation of his civil rights. As it was said before, already in 2004, Bivolaru had gone to Sweden and asked for political asylum. He had been granted political asylum after a long review of his case by the Supreme Court of Sweden. So that was really a serious investigation that had been carried out in Stockholm. They had even invited Madalina, the so-called victim of sexual relations when she was a minor. So they heard her in Stockholm, and so they decided that they ruled that Bivolaru would not have a fair trial in Romania, and they granted him political asylum. So that's his situation now. He is in Sweden. There is a sentence, a prison sentence against him. What's the evidence? Really, I have a lot of question marks on my mind because there is only one sort of evidence which is testimony obtained under constraint, withdrawn on the next day. I know that the case now is being processed to the European Court in Strasbourg, so we will see at the next stage what will happen with that sentence. But he may be deported at any time from Sweden to Romania to start serving his sentence. One other point that I wanted to stress as well is that it's the media. You mentioned before that there had been a thorough investigation by the Association of Human Rights, the former Romanian Helsinki Committee in Bucharest about that case, and they registered all the media coverage, news and films that were shown on television, and also debates on radio, etc. And they came out to this assessment. From March 2004 to October 2005, there were 570 pieces of news hostile to MISA Gregorian Bivolaru that were both broadcast or printed in one way or another. Of course, all this had an impact on the lives of the yoga practitioners, on their family life as well. So we met quite a number of those people, because numerous people were victims of harassment by the media, by the judiciary, as well as of discrimination. Artists, we met artists who had lost their jobs, teachers, engineers, medical doctors, professors, and so on, that were affected by this distorted media coverage. Some lost their jobs, so it was the case, for example, of a judge that I met, of a military, a policeman, a journalist, medical doctor, and in a very exceptional case, the girl who was an adult, she was in her 20s, was kidnapped by her family, confined to a psychiatric hospital with the complicity of the medical staff, forcibly submitted to inhuman medical treatment during 2 months, and then sent back to her family, where she was confined during 9 months, just to convince her to give up her yoga practices. So as a conclusion, I would say that that whole dramatic story had a huge negative impact on quite a number of people. There are now 40,000 yoga practitioners in the MISA schools in Romania. They hide their affiliation to yoga courses. Sometimes they are detected as yoga practitioners because they are lacto-vegetarians. And then when people say that, oh, you don't eat any meat, oh, that is because you're a yoga practitioner, oh, you have that guru that abused the underage girls, and so on and so on. So they hide that, but sometimes they are detected. So the human cost has been absolutely huge and incommensurate. And it's not finished, because there is now a bad name on the MISA schools in general, and on any yoga practitioner in particular. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fautré.
We will move straight to Dan Spatariu, who is a yoga practitioner, and his experiences from the association that he has founded, and the way that authority has dealt with this association.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dan Spatariu. I am a medical doctor, cardiologist, 44 years old, and I practice yoga for 19 years at the courses organized by MISA in Timișoara, a city in western Romania, known as the city where Romanian Revolution started. In the year 2000, together with some fellow yoga practitioners, we founded the NGO Dacica with the purpose of raising the cultural and spiritual level of society by means of yoga and Ayurveda workshops, conferences and festivals. In 2004, during the police attacks on yoga practitioners, I observed with astonishment that Romania society is still full of taboos and preconceived ideas that it is very receptive to calumnies and tendentious intentions carried vehemently by mass media. I have noticed that from the enormous amount of aspects related to yoga, strangely, mass media systematically choose during all these years to present only and only the aspect of sexuality. Therefore, animated by the intentions to bring transparency and the wish to break the preconceived ideas, we decided to organize an open doors festival and to demonstrate to the public that the sexuality which is taught in Tantra and Tao systems is accessible to modern men. The festival was named Love the Life, and it was very successfully. In 7 consecutive years, between 2005 and 2011, we organized 7 editions of this festival. This is how events unfolded chronologically. The first edition in 2005 was marked by the withdrawal of funding from the city council. During the meeting of the council, a picture of me at a yoga protest against the abusive and violent actions of police was used as an argument to withdraw funding. Our organization was imposed an embargo also on another project that was planned for later that year, Breath the Life, a project against smoking. We have filed a court case against the city council on the subject of funds withdrawal, but we lost it. In the final judgment of the case, the judge invoked our link to the MISA movement. 2 months after the decision, I received a suggestion to cease my medical activity at the hospital I was working at, and whose director was also a member of the city council. In the second edition of the festival in 2006, the guest speakers, famous personalities of Romanian culture, received phone calls alerting them that if they speak at the festival, their names will be associated to MISA. In 2007, Romania accedes to the European Union. In that year, 2 days prior to the festival, for which there were distributed already more than 10,000 flyers, we are informed that the lease contract for the festival hall has been cancelled. Thus, the photo exhibit, what we planned and for which we already invited an artist from France, could no longer take place. The reason invoked, the hall cannot accept exhibit of nudes. We have analyzed the case and found out that the very same library was hosting a photo exhibit of nudes a month ago. Same happened with the hall we rented in the Timișoara Business Center, with which have successfully collaborated for 5 years before that. In the following years, we have been prohibited to promote also events that were not connected to sexuality, the Angels Week, for example. In 2008, because of all the calumnies and lies that constitute a broad media campaign, we decided to reconfigure the relation with the press and to organize a press conference to which we invited all the written and audio-video press, more than 40 press units. Not a single journalist came to our press conference. Our rhetoric question to this: is it a boycott or an indifference that aims to marginalize us? For 3 years, we have successfully carried out sexual education programs in the high schools of Timișoara. The school inspectorate, assaulted by the press in relation to the stigmatization of yoga and MISA, was forced to cancel our program. In 2009, many of the companies who sponsored regularly our events announced that they don't want to appear in the sponsors list. In 2010, Gregorian Bivolaru has been acquitted of the charges in court. In that year, together with the amateur theater group Artemisa, we produced the second series of the movie Zen. Mass media became even more virulent. The movie, which is inspired from allegories and parables of the Oriental tradition, is presented in media as a church movie, insinuating to the public opinion that we carry out blasphemies.
On April 2010, we had a meeting with the mayor of Timișoara. I quote, you experience communication issues. You will be understood in 50 years. Too bad I won't be alive then. These words, somewhat realistic, trigger in us a bitter smile for a Romania integrated into the European Union and which obliged to respect Articles 9, 10 and 11 of the Human Rights Convention, freedom of religion and conscience, freedom of expression and freedom of assembly and association respectively. All this being violated in our case. I try to investigate and analyze if this institutional stigmatization is something that happened specifically in our case and in MISA case, but results showed similar case in other cities and with other organizations. Sept, organization from Pitești, Sofrosin Theatre from Bucharest, Romanian Association Unconventional Medicine, also Anima Mundi Foundation of Bucharest. Our conclusion is the next. Stigmatization is born from labeling without communication. When it is systematic and constant during a long time happening in a strong flow, it manifests either ill-willed actions or blatant stupidity. Stigmatization falsifies the reality since it doesn't look beyond appearances. The anachronic mechanism of manipulation by means of mass media are not worthy of a Romania which is a European United member state. These controls are rather echoes of the medieval or at least of the dictatorial Romania. It carries no vision. It only brings stagnation within the limits of petty interests. It destroys life's perspectives, history. As long as it supports such mechanisms, Romania is like a gorgeous woman who walks around with a very bad makeup. Romania needs a mirror. We invite today Europe to be that mirror. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spatariu. And with this testimony from the reality of trying to work in civil society while at the same time being a yoga practitioner, we'll move further. There is a connection between the MISA in Romania and in Italy, because recently also MISA, which is an international yoga school that exists in almost all European countries, has been attacked in Italy. And we have with us today Roberta Rendina, who has worked previously on the other side of the table, so to say, also here at the UDIR, as a politician and later as a human rights activist, is now one of the accused in this saga. Please tell us.
Thank you. So my name is Roberta Rendina, and this year I'm representing Atman Italia, that it was wrongly called MISA from Camillo and Raffaella, and this morning we explained the misunderstanding. We are an independent association connected to MISA, of course. And MISA is the reason because we are persecuted in Italy, because the documentation that we found in the dossier of prosecutor is a copy-paste of Romanian dossier, with some mistakes also, because they speak in Italy about slavery, referring to the situation of ashram and karma yoga, that is a voluntary activity in Romania, that we don't have in Italy, because the school is so small that we don't have money to sustain volunteers and to build ashram. And so coming back to the subject that I want to raise, yeah, I have a double personality, so you have this opportunity today to have here a dangerous criminal persecuted for very big crimes as criminal association, prostitution, and induction and slavery. And I was in the Green Party, and I was a politician for 12 years in Italy, and also there I started my work as a human rights activity. and I never could think to be in the other side or in this kind of event. So for me it's a new situation. And I was really wondered for what happened in my country, because I followed all the trial in Romania, and as I thought for many years, it's a Romanian situation, it's a special situation. It cannot happen in Italy. No. And when 6th of December 2012, this happened to my family, I was quite shocked. Luckily or not, I don't know if it was luck or not, I was in another country. I was in Denmark to help to open a new center in Denmark, because I'm also a yoga teacher. And my family was, they woke up with the police in the house, my parents' house, and police know it very well if they were following me for some years, as I expected. They knew very well that I was not living with my family anymore, and also with my ex-boyfriend. So they searched place in which they were sure to not find me. And the very interesting thing that they went there, and also you have to imagine the shock for a family to be woken up with such information about daughter or ex-girlfriend. And also many friends, many other yoga teachers, that we are 18 still investigated in Italy. And many other yoga teachers and friends was called, also my family was called as people informed on the facts by police in the Florence department. From this famous, now famous for me, Anti-Sect squad. And I was very surprised, because I could not think that in a so-called democratic countries this kind of things can happen. To my father, for example, were told a lot of lies on my life that I cannot recognize absolutely, and also some details about love life, sexual life. And media, as very well Camillo Maffia mentioned before, presented our case like in the Archeon case, and I was very touched by the declaration of Cosimo. Media start a very big campaign. For 3 days we were on all the newspapers and TV programs, and in few days we became monsters. And you have to imagine the neighbors that start to give interview to the TV, telling, "Oh, I was thinking that until yesterday they were normal people." Yeah, we are normal people. So, and as Cosimo before told, when you become a monster, you start to have also some doubts on yourself, because the pressure is so high that you start to think, okay, they should have a reason to do this to my family, to my life. Luckily, we didn't react as Archeon. They decided to close immediately all the association. We decided to open our association, and we start we ask to Cesno, for example, to be studied by them, inviting them, and also the police. Personally asked to the police to join our courses, to open our practice, our technique. And the other things that really surprised me very much, that as a politician, and I didn't know how many other cases like mine were in Italy. So Archeon, Ananda, Sisi, Damanur, Osho, Scientology, these are the most famous. And a very interesting thing that we observe speaking with other people, because another good things that happened, that we start to be friends also with other movements. That was something that was missing in our path. And we discovered that this kind of police operation very often happen when the number of practitioners start to increase. It was also in the Archeon case. Yes, the same. It's exactly the same. So my question, also to representative of my government, is this Anti-Sect squad and this Anti-Sect forum really are investigating and counteracting the dangerous effect of sects, or it's a way to, in some way, to control the number of practitioners of other spiritual paths? Because this is the main question that we have in mind in this moment. And the fact that is in the decree of foundation of this Anti-Sect squad that I personally met, and I invite you to meet them. So I was telling that in this decree of foundation are mentioned like expert some Catholic priests. So is it possible that in a democratic country a spiritual group can be a judge for another spiritual or religious exponent? I think that this is, if not illegal, something really close to be illegal. And so the state should be impartial on this. How can it happen that a Catholic priest that also Camillo mentioned from this Papa Giovanni XXIII community can be called like expert also in the trial to tell if a spiritual group is a sect or not? And
we will
yeah,
go further. Thank you very much for this vivid testimony of your situation, partly unique also. There are many unique situations here at the table, and of course this is an issue that could be discussed not only in 1.5 hours, but 1.5 days or weeks. We go directly to opening for questions or comments from you, questions to the panelists, and keep it short because we are running in the last 10 minutes.
My question is there, thank you very much for your presentation. Is there a fake risk group in Italy and in Romania? Are there fake risk groups in Italy and Romania?
Yes.
Yes. And do they have anything to do with this horrible interventions?
Yes, they have something to do, yes.
And
in the first case, Archeon, the persecution began after a dossier written by the president of Sept. Sept is one of the Fautré associations. Everything began with this dossier and the participation of the president of this organization in broadcast and interviews and so on. And the MISA case, we know that Italian Fautrés received some information about an ex-member, Cecilia. This Italian Fautrés received this information by Fautrés, the president of Fautrés, I don't remember the name, and then Italian Fautrés sent this information to Anti-Cult Squad.
Wow. And
this is sure.
Just one more question then. How can Fautrés maintain their consultative status at the United Nations as in the Economic Social Council? How can they maintain the status?
Willy, this is for you.
Yeah, I certainly don't have the answer to this question, except that the affiliation to ECOSOC can be reviewed every 4th year.
Yeah.
So you should see when they were first registered with its status, and then inform the proper mechanisms of the UN of some sectarian deviances of those groups.
I think we should do that.
We have to. I'm sorry, we have to go further.
Fundamental Rights Association. They are also a member of the Fundamental Rights Association.
Yeah, they are, and I mean, of course, any civil society group has the right to exist. The problem is how it's funded, how it's connected, and for that, Willy Fautré has been part of making an excellent report that I'm sure is available. It is available on the online.
Just a quick point of order. What is the group you're calling? Italian what group?
Cesape, that's what you said? Cesape.
No, what is the name of the group that is being discussed?
It's called Atman Yoga School, Italy. Fakeries. Fakeries. The Anti-Sect. Yeah.
It's an anti-sect French group.
Exactly.
Italian.
Exactly. We go further to.
No, it is a European umbrella organization with affiliated associations in various European countries.
Including the UN. Council of Europe.
And they have a status, ECOSOC status at the UN and also a status at the Council of Europe.
And it's financed 90%.
95% by, yeah.
And has a very strong position in France, so it's easy to make this connection. We go shortly to Bashir.
My name is Bashir Qureshi. I work with NGOs with equality, human rights, anti-discrimination. I heard about fakeries a few years back in European Parliament. Somebody gave me a book, and as you get a lot of books at conferences, so I just put it in a heap. And when I had time in summer, I read it and I was shocked. So I decided to contact fakeries, and it was impossible. And then I found out through a friend in Brussels that they were having an annual meeting in Copenhagen where I live. So I decided to go there and talk to them, and just as a journalist also find out what do they do and if maybe we can work together. I came to the door, and since I had no invitation and the conference was secret, but fortunately for me and for all you people, one of their treasurer, main treasurer, a board member, he looked at me and he said, who are you? So I showed him my press card, I showed him my other cards. Oh, come in. And he took me there, put me in the front seat, introduced me with their president, Tom Saxville, and their vice chair, who is also here in this conference. And I took a lot of pictures. I, recorded all their speeches on my iPhone. So I was very interested. And then I was given an interview, possibility with Tom Saxville, the president of fakeries. I asked him certain questions, and what you do, and what is your job, how you help people, how you help people who are subjected to so-called sects. And then when I said, until that time he was very nice, but when I told him that in all your speeches I hear that you are accusing and you are demonizing Scientology, is there any special reason for that? So he got very uptight. He said, are you a Scientologist? I said, I'm not a Scientologist. I have a Muslim background, I'm a journalist, I'm a human rights activist, so why you're calling me a Scientologist? He said, no, this kind of question is only Scientologists can ask. So then I asked him that if, let's say, Scientology or other sect members are brainwashing their people, why don't you take them to court? The simple thing. No, we try to save children, we try to save their members so that they come out of that evil, anyway. And then I asked him another question which really pissed him off. In one of the board members is a Russian intellectual called, what is his name? Alexander? Yeah, really ugly man, So he came to me and he said, I said to Tom Saxville that forget about Scientology, forget about sex, why are you anti-Islam? Because your board member has been saying a lot of nasty things about Islam in his lecture in St. Petersburg and in Moscow. And he said, it's not true. I said, I can send you the link. I have everything on the link, Then this Russian guy came and started accusing me. And what they did, they encircled me. I was sitting in the front seat like this. 8, 9 people came around me and started threatening me, So I got up and I said, look, you people don't know who you're messing with. I can make a very big problem for you. I'm the chairman of this. I'm working with human rights. I'm working in the largest NGO network. And I was here so that to maybe support your work, to see what kind of wonderful work, but your way of treating me, the way secretively you're meeting, to me it shows that you are not the right one, the other one you're accusing are on the right path. And they wanted to know my CPR number, identification number, they wanted to see my passport and everything. The funniest thing is that their vice chairman is a lady from Switzerland. I have met her in Geneva many times in human rights conferences, and she acknowledged and she said, oh, I know you who you are, and even yesterday when she was here, she gave me a hug. So This is what I don't understand, you know. My personal position as a human rights fighter is anybody can belong to any religion, any cult, any sect, whatever you want to call it, as long as they are peaceful, non-violent, and do not actually brainwash people. As simple as that. And I have known Scientology for 20 years. They have not succeeded in brainwashing me. So it is such a stupid way of accusing people for this and that when there is no scientific proof, when there is no actual proof, there is nothing. All they are afraid is, and especially these factories, they get money from French Prime Minister's office. They get money from very big organization, and I'm sure they have a link also with the Catholic Church and other big religious organizations, because you heard yesterday how many big organizations were demonizing Islam. So actually we all are in the same boat, you know, calling Islam not a religion but an evil ideology from OSCE platform. I think I will advise all of people who work with yoga or with human rights, spiritual human rights, we should make alliances. We should get together and complain to the United Nations, complain to everybody. That is what we should do. I made a video actually about the whole situation. I sent it all over the world, and Fikri is really, really pissed off because that is the reality. I have complained to Council of Europe. I got a letter from them. They're looking into why, and I think we should definitely not let it just happen to us. I don't believe in accepting oppression. I don't oppress anybody, but goddamn, I do not let anybody oppress me. Thank you.
Thank you. We come for the last question comment.
So it would be very hard after what Mr. Bashir said about Fikris, and Fikris has right to exist as an association, but I'm representing a French association, Cap Liberté de Conscience, and we are fighting since the beginning against the Fikris and the fact that the Fikris is financed by France. So my main interest is we are trying to doing reports to the French government of what our force Fikris is doing outside France with the money of France. So I'm very interested by having all data regarding Romania and Italy activity of Fikris to report it to the French government to show what their money is paying outside of the country. The fact that the Fikris has right to exist is not a problem, but in their they said there are apolitics movements and there are non-religious movements. And what we find out that through their activity in Italy or Romania, that's straightly connected to religious movement or politics movement. So we want to influence the French government to just, they can communicate with Fikris. Fikris can exist, but to stop to pay this association at 100%, not 19, 95 or 99, but 100% of the finance of this association come from the French government. So it's now a matter of the French government to stop this activity, to pay this association, because it's against the constitution of the human rights. So I'm very interested to get any data regarding this activity with religious or politics data to inform the French government.
Thank you. And of course, the anti-sect situation is a very important one, and we want to underline that we see it as a result of this one culture simply facing an immaturity with relating to unfamiliar phenomena, which are these new spiritual movements. And I know there are more questions and comments, but I want to leave the last 5 minutes for 1 minute each for our esteemed panelists.
Thank you. And I think the most important thing that we should keep in mind, especially for Italian government and the other governments, the governments of the other countries, is the difference between the media campaigns about religious minorities and the results of the trials against the religious minorities. Because not one single cult was found in my country. And thousands of articles of television specials are made about cults. So people is allowed to think that it is my country is full of dangerous sect who wants to hurt people, and they think they have a good reason to fear these minorities, and especially some minorities like the one we quoted. And the media problem is that nobody publishes the results of the trials.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that the Italian anti-cult movement made a big mistake when they persecuted me, because I am not a Scientologist, I am not a Jehovah's Witness, I am a Catholic people, I am a Catholic teacher of Catholic religion in Italy, in a high school. So to persecute me was their biggest mistake. And I think this was, I hope, almost the end of this kind of things. Because for the first time, 4 parliamentary politicians, Italian politicians, understood the problem, and they present the question to the parliament. Because this is very dangerous. If a scholar is studying a movement and you close my website and accuse me of the worst crime in the world. So it was a very bad period for me, very bad period, because I have many problems for this situation, but perhaps something good it will be in the future, I think.
Thank you. Just 2 points that I want to raise. First, that the privileged status of fake Christians should be removed, and we should unite our efforts so that it happens in due time at the UN and at the Council of Europe. Also to ask to put an end to the financing of such a movement with public money. Second point, we heard a number of statements here at the OSCE today that were anti-Islam, as you said, in one way or another. In the previous years, we also heard statements from fake Christian representatives against sects in France and in other countries. I think here again we should unite our efforts and ask the OSCE to forbid any form of criticism against any other religious movement. We are here to monitor the implementation of the standards of the OSCE by the governments, and that's how it should stay, by the governments. Thank you.
I have here two books about which shows reality of MISA movement, also in the times of communism and also till nowadays. Written by Gabriel Andreescu, the founder of the Helsinki Committee of Romania. The synthesis of the book in English is available at the desk. It's interesting to know about it, to read it. And also I have like a conclusion is a rhetoric question. The mass media means pluralism, diversity. Why, when this phenomenon of stigmatization happens, all the mass media, almost all mass media is unitary in making something bad? How explain? Because the MISA phenomenon was started in the same time, and the more curious than that is that in the same time stopped. And just one word can answer to this. The word is command. Was a command. It's like a command. It's like I think this is the word.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I have an official request for the government of my country through this event. Because we have the presumption, the idea to export democracy in all the world as Western countries, I ask for an act to show this, creating an official committee, internal committee in the government to investigate the phenomena that we spoke today, and to see if what we described today is true, and if through Anti-Sect Association and Anti-Sect Squad in Italy really we are applying the basic principle of freedom of religion, consciousness and beliefs that we want to explain to other countries.
Thank you to all the panelists, and as a conclusion from our side, we encourage all the governments, not only those who have been targeted or in the searchlight in this event, as was said initially, even in Denmark, even in Sweden, these issues exist. We live still in a cultural heritage with, when it comes to a different spiritual practice, it's considered strange and possibly dangerous. We also ask anyone who wants to work for freedom of religion and belief for all to join in a coming network and platform for this. So hand for the courageous panelists, who some of them are under persecution themselves, and for the common work that we all do for the freedom of religion and belief. Thank you.
Thank you very much.